Welcome back to another episode of the React Native Radio Podcast. Episode 329, State of React Native Survey Results.
Mazen, did they lock you away? You seem to be in this like white, sterile environment right now. Where exactly are you tuning in from here?
I'm actually tuning in from my house, but a different location now. This is my new office. We've had construction going on out of the house for about 6 months now, and finally everything's done. We're just doing the little like blue tape stuff now, but this is the office.
Yay!
You're in.
I know, right? It's sterile because there's nothing on the walls or anything yet. Like the TV's not up, nothing. It's just fridge.
You're going to have a TV in your office? That's smart.
Because it's also going to try and be a workout space in a way. Yeah. So it's a little detached shed, or as Justin called it, the Mazen.
The Mazen. Yes, that's great.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at now. But also happy to finally have a space that is not my kitchen table or some random room in the house.
Yeah. We've been seeing you with some pretty random backgrounds.
Yeah, you just kind of roll the dice. Where's
a
Mazen?
while, you know, you're like, where in the world is Mazen today?
That was me for a while.
That's awesome. I can say from experience, getting a new office that's like yours and you can make it your own and you have your own space is really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep thinking about building like an outbuilding of some sort, like a shop or something with a nice office in it, and maybe, you know, put a sauna in there and I don't know, maybe room for my tractor, right? Yeah. So, but
not a sauna, a sauna.
No, sauna. Yeah,
because
as a true
Finnish.
Finn would say.
10 out of 10
one word
do recommend.
that everybody knows, they all mispronounce. Anyway, let's get into our episode. We have a lot to talk about. So let's talk about our sponsor really quickly. Infinite Red is a premier React Native consultancy located fully remote in the U.S., including in Mazen's new office. We're a team of, we have about 30 people, mostly senior, well, they're all senior level developers, just not everybody's a developer. If you're looking for React Native expertise for your next project, hit us up at infinite.red/radio. And don't forget to mention that you heard about us through React Native Radio. Definitely helps. We appreciate that. All right, let's talk about the State of React Native Survey by Software Mansion. They did a fantastic job on this. I'm always impressed, and I feel like it's gotten better every single year. Mazen, you did an episode with Bartek. I don't know. Was that sometime last year? Early last year?
Yeah, it was early last year where we talked about putting together of the survey and, you know, what all goes into it and stuff like that. So I think that was a cool episode just to see behind the scenes, and hopefully, you know, it was a good prompt for people to actually fill it out.
Yeah, totally. I know they got a huge response this time. Something like, it was like almost 3,500 people. So that was pretty awesome. Top of the list is developer background, and I want to talk really quickly about the before React Native. What was your background before you started using React Native? Anything stand out here for you two?
The native devs are lower on the list.
Yeah, I think maybe we're biased because we have a lot of clients that are moving from a native app to a React Native app, and so we're working with native devs who are learning React Native a lot. But I expected iOS and Android to be higher on this list, but it's only 10% for iOS and 13% for Android, compared to 61% for React developers.
React
which
Web
also makes sense.
Yeah.
React Web, yeah.
And that's just React Web, because other front-end technologies are lumped in as 40% at number 2.
Yeah, so these percentages don't add up to 100% because you could choose more than one.
Mm-hmm.
That also stood out to me. There's, you know, obviously we always love it when our native developer friends join us here in the React Native world because they make it better for all of us. But it's still dominated by web, and I think it will be for quite some time.
Agreed.
Now, we are seeing a few people who started with React Native. That's actually number 4 at 14%, which is kind of interesting.
I guess the popularity is that high. And also, one thing I am noticing is a lot of boot camps will mainly focus on React, but will also do a couple modules on React Native. And that's probably where, you know, people get their interest in to learn more about it.
I have a friend, Jacob Sepinen, who was a career switcher. I had actually talked to him way back in the day. He was considering switching from his previous career, and he went to a boot camp. And I did not tell him, like, go into React Native at that time. I just said, go and find something that you like and see what you want to do. He chose Android and was like going through their Android stuff and went through the Android course, got out of that boot camp and promptly got a React Native job. And he's been doing it for like 4 years since, which is kind of cool. Maybe 5 years now. And it was kind of interesting. So he probably would have started with React Native, even though he had that Android developer bootcamp experience. The next section we want to talk about is the contribution to React Native, and kind of, building on this developer background. I know for us, we did a lot of open source. We were doing native iOS. A lot of us were web developers. So this part's always very interesting to me. Who's contributing to React Native Core? And then who's contributing to the libraries in the ecosystem?
It's looking like we have about 93% of people who said they've never contributed to React Native Core, which is like pretty comparable to last year's numbers. They're not changing a whole lot, other than like more people responded to the survey overall. So there's more people that said yes. But in general, it doesn't seem like people are starting to contribute to React Native more.
Right.
I think what I've been hearing a lot is it's intimidating to contribute, which is probably a factor to why this number is so low. I'd love to see it flipped, right? That would be ideal, where we're contributing and also working in React Native at the same time. But it's intimidating, and most people don't even know where to start.
Right, exactly. People don't know where to start, and there's just a lot of context that they don't have, and there's not a lot of education around like learning how to contribute to React Native Core. Mostly education is focused on how to use React Native and how to be good at building with it. But it's mostly like the people at Meta that have all the mental models of how everything goes together and have the ability, because it's a huge amount of context that you have to have. That's very, very different from the knowledge that you'd have being a user of React Native.
And you need to know so many different languages.
Right? C++.
Right. Objective-C, Kotlin. I don't know if there's any Java left.
Now it's Swift rather than Objective-C.
They have moved to Swift. Yeah. And then there's obviously there's Flow, actually, not TypeScript. And there's I think some Groovy, potentially Ruby. Yeah, there's all kinds of things going on in there just to pull everything together. And so, yeah, I totally get that. But contributions to React Native libraries is higher. That's 25%, which actually is pretty impressive to me. 25%. That's a big number.
I think that's also because most open source repos that I've seen specifically have like the how to contribute section. I had that in air quotes there. And that's usually helpful because every single library, and maybe this is something we could do better of as a React Native or just open source community in general, every package has their own way of doing things and publishing things and require you to go through different steps. So usually that contributing section walks you through what to do, and it's good to have that. So I think going back to the initial point on why aren't we contributing enough to React Native, there's really no starting point or education around it, while open source packages are usually almost the Wild West. Hey, come fix this. And then it just kind of gets merged in, right? And then fixed along the way.
Anisha Balde from Amazon, who is an awesome person. I've met her in a couple of different conferences. She did the kind of recap of this section, and she said that in her view, it's kind of evolving. React Native's evolving from learn once, write everywhere to write once, run everywhere. The thing that kind of the core team didn't want anybody to say because that's a lot of pressure, but it's kind of happening. And of course, she works for Amazon, and they're bringing that to TV, as she said there. There is one more section in this developer background that I want to hit on, and that is industry sectors. So which industry sector are you using React Native in? What struck me about this one is that there's no like dominant sector. Even the top one, which is finance, is only 19%. And then there's health and fitness at 17, education at 17, entertainment at 15. And then it just kind of goes down like 1% at a time, or even less than 1% at a time, for all the way down. Like, I don't know, where the last one is cybersecurity at, number 42. That's only 1%, but it's just like React Native isn't an industry sector specific thing. And even like you have all these apps in places where you want to make sure, like, who cares if it's entertainment, right? Like whatever. But sorry, people that are working in the entertainment side, in terms of like security, finance really needs security, but that's number one. People are using React Native all the time. I know Coinbase has been using it for years. And then on the flip side, entertainment needs performance. They're doing all this media rich stuff, and yet they're number 4 here. And 15% of our React Native developers are working on entertainment apps. So it just shows that React Native is just widely used. It's not something that is limited by what it can do. Now, one big category we do not see here, well, it is on the list, but it's pretty far down, is games. And that's only 6%. So games, obviously, that's going to be a fairly low thing because there are a lot of other things out there, Unity and the new Godot, which of course I've been doing some work in and whatnot, that are cross-platform solutions that are specifically designed for games. And React Native has some capability that way, but generally speaking, people aren't building like...
It's not what it's best at.
Right, exactly. Any other thoughts from you two about the industry sector side?
I personally, for one, love seeing the split because, like you said, React Native is not just for one industry, it's for all. Mm-hmm. And, I was actually even looking at this list and being like, all right, cool. Like some of the most recent companies that we've worked for and looking at our list,
yeah.
It's not in the top 5. Well, one of them is as of recent, but, as of 2024, end of 2024, when this came out, we weren't in the top 5, potentially not even, we're in the top 8. So it's like, even us who we're consulting for some of the smaller industry sectors that are trying to make it bigger and kind of potentially expand that percentage value for that sector. So that's pretty cool.
It would be really interesting to see. It'd be hard to do in a survey, but it'd be interesting to see users, like user base across all sectors. Like how many users are using React Native apps? I know that Evan Bacon did, of course, those like top React Native apps in each for the App Store sections, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and stay tuned for my next iteration of the top React Native apps out there. I do plan on kind of pivoting that a little bit to focus on industry sectors too.
So moving on to the next section, we're going to skip over the demographics thing because that has a lot of really interesting information, but we'll get stuck on it. We always do. So go check that out if you want to see the demographics of who answered the survey. But what APIs do you use in your React Native apps? This one's always interesting. Something really stood out on this.
Specifically, these are platform APIs, so the native APIs.
Yes.
Top, we have camera,
which is wild.
At 67%, and then notifications at also 65%.
Yeah.
Which notifications makes a lot of sense to me. Camera was a surprise.
I know, right?
Because, and maybe it's just the type of apps we build, but like, I feel like we've used camera in some of them, but not a lot of them. So yeah, that was surprising, but it sounds like people also had a really positive experience with the camera API, which I think is awesome, and probably in part due to React Native Vision Camera.
Yeah. Which
is an excellent library built by Mark Rusavi, who we've had on the show before.
Yeah, 29% said a positive experience, that's a tremendously positive, like I guess 3/4 said, that they were fine. They didn't mark whether it was positive or not. And then only 4% said negative. So yeah, the sentiment's good. Yeah, camera, notifications. We had permissions, deep links, persistence. Anything stand out to you?
I had to chuckle at the amount of negative sentiment for deep links and notifications, which I agree with.
Yeah.
Those are the source of a lot of pain, and not through any fault of React Native.
Navigation's not built in, so you have to kind of roll your own. Of course, React Navigation has some ways to solve this, but the best probably is going to be, Expo Router.
You're at the mercy of the platforms,
right,
to a large extent for both notifications and deep links, which is partly what makes them more painful.
Yeah. So I think one thing was further down the list, number 29, with just under 9%, RTL was on there. So it's kind of
right to left language.
Right to left language. Yeah, it's good to kind of see that out there. And also interesting how 14% of that 9% had negative experience with it, and 14 had positive experience, and the rest were just neutral. So interesting to see that. And hopefully that kind of gets to grow in the future. And again, kind of based on my talk, I'm a little biased on that.
Right. So Katty Craman wrote the kind of the recap, and she mentioned here that a really interesting point. She says that a lot of times why you go to an app is because you don't have full access to the native APIs. And so that's why camera is at the top spot, which it was last year as well. And so, I think she points out a really good point there. And she also talked about the negative experience with deep linking. Says that obviously with Expo Router, hopefully it'll get a lot better. All right, let's talk state management.
Ooh, everybody's favorite topic. Let's do this.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, right. So there's a few different ways to sort the, kind of the, I don't know, like it depends on what story you want to tell. There's usage, there's positivity, there's retention, there's interest. I don't know. But we're talking about all the state management solutions that everybody is talking about. And I would say, generally speaking, the thing that's interesting is that React built-ins are dropping a little bit. They used to be just king with 97%. It's starting to drop a little bit. It's down to 91%, and which is kind of interesting. It means some people are not using like use state and whatnot.
Yeah, that is interesting. We're also seeing a drop in Redux as well.
For better or for worse?
With an almost proportional increase in Justand.
I don't think that's on accident. I think people are switching from Redux to Justand.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I currently use that on my project, and I like the ergonomics of it.
Yeah, it's kind of Redux light and Redux done a little bit more like modern way. There's also obviously Redux Toolkit, RTK, but that's actually just staying kind of flat. So it feels like some people are maybe moving from Redux to Redux Toolkit, although they could have probably checked both and said, I'm using Redux and Redux Toolkit, because that would be accurate.
And then we have a whole crop that are all below 20%.
Right.
Things like Xstate, our beloved MobX is down there too.
Yeah.
Which makes sense that there's some major players and then a bunch of smaller players. I know we have one project that's using Xstate, and they seem to like it for their use case.
Yeah, totally.
In summary, Redux is still most widely used, but it's dropping. So I think this is like 2025 might be the year where we see something different.
Well, yeah, we'll see what next year's results are.
Let's also talk about on-device storage. Anything stand out to you for this one, which is what on-device storage solutions do you use in your React Native apps?
Yeah. Why are people still using async storage?
By a lot.
84%.
Yeah.
There's probably some inertia with that because it was the like blessed solution for so long. It was actually, wasn't it part of React Native Core?
Yeah.
It was, and it was
at
extracted.
One point, originally it was part of React Native Core before it was broken out. So I think there's just a lot of inertia, and people just use it because that's what they've always used.
And you know what? Actually, no. Okay. I take back my comment of being surprised, but still surprised. Why are you still using async storage? But one thing I have seen online a lot of is when you are using a third-party package, most third-party packages give you the async storage example, and you almost have to search the issues for the MMKV version.
Yeah.
And, my whole thing to that is like, okay, that's the default. Sure, that works. One thing I would point out is MMKV, just check the repo out for like its performance. It is performantly better. It's not, like you don't have to async away. So you don't have to put spinners and all that kind of stuff and all that. It's on demand. That's where we're going to with the new architecture. It's 30 times, if not more faster than async storage.
Yeah, not 30% faster, 30 times faster.
Yeah.
Exactly. And one thing also to point out is async storage, 4% of the respondents said they had negative experience with it, while only 1% said they had negative experience with MMKV. And that tracks for me. I haven't had an issue with MMKV.
31% positive.
Exactly.
Which is, yeah.
So,
but I mean,
the only thing
storage...
even close to that. The only thing even close to that is React Native MMKV storage, the other MMKV library in this list.
Right. Yeah.
So,
which I, to be honest, have never used. But that's pretty cool. I mean, there's an argument to be made that async storage should integrate one of these MMKV things and pull it in and just use it under the hood to make everything faster.
Right.
Or just integrate MMKV themselves. I don't know. There was also Expo SQLite, which is kind of a cool library, has very positive sentiment. And there's also Realm and a couple others. Watermelon DB is actually there as well. We're starting a project fairly soon that uses Watermelon DB, so that's pretty cool. All right, let's move to data fetching. So data fetching is, of course, where you're querying across the network. And for me, I'm seeing like Apollo dropping. It's it's been dropping over time. It's down to 34%. I think that just kind of mirrors just sort of the sentiment around GraphQL in general. Axios and Fetch itself are kind of neck and neck.
Equivalently high.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. And if you use API sauce, that's just Axios. It's a wrapper around Axios that we put out.
Yeah, it's a pretty lightweight wrapper too.
There's RTK Query, which a lot of people use if you're using RTK, and that one is growing a bit, up to 23%. And then TanStack Query, otherwise known as React Query,
huge gains,
continues to gain ground. And I've heard very, very positive sentiment.
Almost, it's similar to Redux and Justin. They're very proportional.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like TanStack's going up the same rate that Apollo is going down.
We really need to get Tanner on this podcast.
We should.
That'd be a lot of fun.
I'm using TanStack Query in conjunction with Fetch on my project, and it's very good. Like, it's almost replacing our state management in certain parts because it does its caching and all that under the hood. And if you filter this chart by positivity, number one on the list is TanStack Query. So that tracks in my mind. It's very ergonomical and easy to use type library.
Let's move to navigation. So navigation libraries, of course, the dominant one over the past many years has been React Navigation. But we have a new player in town.
Well, to be fair, the new player is made by the same people who make React Navigation. So it's understandable that they're taking some of their numbers. But you're, of course, talking about Expo Router. And
also, to be pedantic about this, but we're developers, Expo Router is built on top of React Navigation.
it is built on top of React Navigation. So I'm sure there are people out there who answered the survey and checked both because they're like, well, I'm using Expo Router and React Navigation.
Yeah, and a new addition to the survey is React Native Screens, which is actually up there at 64%. That's because almost everybody that uses React Navigation has React Native Screens turned on, which allows you to have like native screens under the hood. And then Expo Router, of course, uses it as well. Mazen actually ran into a bunch of bugs with React Native Screens recently while using Expo Router. We're working with Software Mansion on potentially getting that fixed. But yeah, so it's a newer, obviously Expo Router's new and it has more bugs and things like that, but the ergonomics are pretty good. It's not for everybody. You may want to stay with React Navigation and kind of roll your own like deep linking and whatnot. But I think Evan's vision's pretty good, and we've talked about it before on this podcast.
The whole file-based routing pattern that I think everyone is very, and it goes back to the demographics, right? Where we saw a lot of React developers kind of coming in to the game for React Native. So it kind of tracks in that sense where file-based routing resonates with them.
Yeah, totally. Next one is styling, and what styling techniques do you use in your React Native apps? And Infinite Red has sort of our preferred way to do things. Let's see how it matches up. What do you notice from this chart?
Well, I noticed that Style Sheet API is going from nearly 100%, and it's fallen to about 90%. And then inline styles have taken over the top spot.
And explain the difference there.
So when I first read this, I was like, inline styles? Like, how are people using inline styles? It doesn't actually mean inline.
Right, like sticking
literally inline.
Object right in line.
Right.
Yeah.
It just means like you're passing an object or an array of objects directly to the style prop rather than initiating a style sheet.
Which is what we do.
Instance. Which is what we do. We store them as variables, so they're not inline, quote unquote. But
yeah, just const right in the same file as the.
Well, because we've been saying this for years that if you look in the source code of React Native Core, there's this like basically to-do comment that was like, add style sheet optimizations at a later time.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
So it doesn't do anything.
It just returns the object that you give it. So it
just returns the object that you give it.
And it's not even typed as well as you can type it using TypeScript.
Yeah. Right. It's much easier to type it directly. Yeah. So we've been using inline styles for years. A lot of people really like the native wind is an up and comer.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah, that's moving up. It's now fourth, 36%.
Styled components saw a pretty big drop from last year. I think people are starting to move away from it.
So there is a little like Style X 2% at the bottom of this chart. But from what I understand, Style X is like, it's more for web at this point. It is a pretty cool thing, but by Meta, but it kind of like abstracts away by using the compiler to like compile in, all of your styles into like a style sheet. But I haven't actually even tried it on React Native. It looks like most people haven't.
Yeah. Another one on there too for me is React Native Unistyles. That's been one that's really working on performance and no re-renders within it. They had 4% in 23 and now it's 17%. So it's slow rise. But Jasek's also working in tandem with Mark Rusavi with Nitro modules to make sure it's fully written in C++.
All right, let's jump forward to component libraries because I think people will be interested in this.
So what jumps out to me is that the very highest one in terms of usage is less than 50%.
It's at 40%. Yeah, React Native paper.
And I have to say, the times that I've used a component library, I kind of understand it. I really prefer to build my own components. Like you always just end up hamstrung at some point by a component that's not configurable in the specific way that you need it to be for your designs. And so, yeah, I get it.
Leveraging something like Unistyles, in my opinion, even though it's not a quote unquote component library, it helps you build your own component library better so that you don't have to, like you said, Robin, like fight with it. Almost like putting a square peg in a round hole type situation. Just reach for something like Unistyles if you want and build your own component library.
I can see reaching for it if you're building a proof of concept or you're building something without any kind of designer or designs. But for the type of project, especially that we do, it handcuffs you too much.
Yeah. And, they don't mention Ignite's component system, but that's sort of because Ignite's component system is designed to be mostly just using your native primitives and it's all embedded in your app, just like
right. It's not a library that you install specifically for its components.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I want to talk about debugging. So debugging, of course, has always been a big deal, and having tools is super important. We're also in a point where we're sort of transitioning tools. So we have the experience, we have the sentiment of the different debugging tools out there. Of course, console.log still rules.
Are you even a JavaScript developer if you don't have console logs all over your app?
And unfortunately, the console log is going away from our Metro connection. So we're going to have to do something different. Actually, Frank and I were just talking, Frank Calise from Infinite Red, we're just talking about improving the Reactitron support even better than it is. So that's something that's a big deal. But yeah, so then we have Element Inspector as well. That's the one that is built in to React Native itself. You can actually enable it and then click on a component and look at it. It's pretty limited, but it's used by a ton of people.
Then we have React DevTools and now React Native DevTools. React Native DevTools being the new React Native debugger that was introduced end of last year, I guess. So it was pretty new at the time this survey came out and still had, 1,800 people say that they use it, which is pretty impressive.
It is. And that's where all the console logs are now
That's
routed.
where they will, yes. That's instead of the Metro server, they're going to go out to the debugger, which I've used and it's pretty easy to use. Feels really integrated and it feels official. It feels like this is supposed to be there and not just sort of tacked on.
I'm also kind of interested to see Flipper still on this list.
Who is still using Flipper?
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's 60%.
1,800 people.
It's crazy. It's on the list so high. It seems very high on the list, but there's one comment where it says Flipper was by far one of the worst things to happen in the history of React Native.
Is that what one of the comments
That's
actually
what
says?
I mean,
That's
it's a
funny.
direct quote. Flipper was by far one of the worst
funny.
things to happen in the history of React Native. It was incredibly buggy, caused build failures, and never worked correctly. I'm not bashing on Flipper here, but that's most of the comments in here are all negative experience comments. That was the first one that kind of stuck out to me. There's 3 or 4 positive, experience. And I feel like most of the community is on the negative side of Flipper. So yeah, I don't know. I think we'll see less of Flipper in future ones.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, because it's deprecated, it's removed from React Native init now. So like, yeah, I think it's on its way out for sure.
And then there's our own Reactatron, which doesn't have as much usage as we'd like. It's still, I think it's somewhere around 10% of React Native developers use it. There are some legitimate issues pointed out because we haven't invested in Reactatron like we've really wanted to in the past. That is starting to change. I've actually started doing like, I call it hackatrons, where I'm hacking on Reactatrons on Fridays. And it's already been pretty fun. There's some really good PRs out there that we're reviewing and going to get merged in. I even played around with a redesign. So look for more from Reactatron soon. And actually, we're going to integrate native logs into Reactatron. Frank is working on that right now. So that's going to make things a lot easier for seeing what the native app is actually logging out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, super, super cool. And then, of course, Radon IDE from Software Mansion is coming up, and more and more people are using it. It's built into, of course, Visual Studio Code or Cursor. And then Flashlight is another kind of like a performance thing. Yeah, but I think it's only for Android. And then the Performance API itself, React Native Performance, I think is underrated. I'd like to actually integrate that with Reactatron as well and make that a very, very nice experience within just checking performance across the board. So more to come. Jumping forward to build and publish, what stands out to you about the build and publish workflows?
EAS is the clear winner and biggest, like most improved. Mm-hmm. It went from middle of the pack to strong first place in terms of usage. It's at 70% usage, which is amazing. And like we use it, and I totally understand why it has such good usage numbers now, because it works amazingly well.
Yeah, App Center dropping.
Poor App Center. The fact that there's still 34% of people using it, they're hanging on. We have one client that's still like hanging on till the very end of the deadline when it gets turned off.
It's going to be pretty soon.
Yep.
So DevTools, this one's fun because, of course, our own Ignite is in the mix here. And I wanted to mention that if you look at all of the different tools for scaffolding and developing React Native apps, like basically knitting new React Native apps, there's the React Native community CLI, and there's a whole pile of Expo stuff. That's kind of what you see.
Yep.
And then among the community supported ones, Ignite is still number one. So I find that pretty encouraging. We put a lot of time into Ignite to make it a really good experience, and people, generally speaking, have a very positive opinion of it.
Mm-hmm. I also thought it was really interesting to see the huge drop in the React Native CLI in 2023, when I think that probably lined up when Expo was added to the React Native docs as like, this is how you should start projects. And yeah, Expo is just at the very tippy top.
Yeah, Expo just dominates it because, starting with your Expo CLI makes a lot of sense. And actually, to be honest, that's what Ignite does these days. We build an Expo.
You have Ruby on Rails and you have React Native on Expo.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. In that same section, we have package managers as well. By far, the biggest is NPM with 67%. But number 2 was really interesting to me. 44% still use Yarn 1 Classic.
Classic.
That's because Yarn 2 was so bad, and so I think people stuck with Yarn 1.
Yeah.
And never wanted to upgrade. Yarn 4 has been, I've been using Yarn 4 and it's good.
Yeah, exactly. And then there are some people using PNPM, and then newcomer Bun, which has some bugs still, but like, I don't know. I'm a huge fan of Bun. I've been building, everything I build these days is in Bun. If it has anything to do with Node, I use Bun, both as a package manager and as a runtime. In the resources section, there's newsletters and news platforms. And on that one, we have Twitter still, or X still being the number one way that people get news. There's Sebastian Lorber's This Week in React newsletter. And Reddit is big. and our own React Native newsletter. It has 32% of the respondents chose that. So that's pretty amazing. Definitely go check it out. If you haven't seen React Native newsletter, go to reactnativenewsletter.com. And of course, the section that we've been waiting for this whole time. The whole reason that we did this.
We saved the best for last. The reason we did this episode.
Right.
Is so we could point out that the number one podcast in the survey at 63%.
Yeah, that's
pretty good.
Of respondents to this question.
To the question. Now, obviously, a lot of people may not have responded to this question, but
351 people.
Yeah.
We're talking to you. Put React Native Radio at the top of the list. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you doing that. We appreciate you telling your friends about us. We put a lot of time into this episode, into all episodes. Just as an example, this episode has taken like an hour to record so far because there's just so much to go through, and we've had to, the editors have had to cut a lot of things to make this like really feel good. And you probably didn't notice because the editors do such a great job. And the editors are literally like Infinite Red CEO Todd Worth and Infinite Red Director of Operations Jed Bartosky. We don't necessarily farm this out. We have our leadership work on this, and so we appreciate all of the time that we put into this being recognized by you folks in the audience.
And we also have a new editor, Tyler Williams, who's assisting.
Oh yeah, Tyler.
Assisting the team too. So who's here a senior software engineer here at Infinite Red. So
yep, and maintainer of MobX State Tree. So
it's a team effort for sure.
Yeah, a few others to mention. Rocket Ship by Simon Grimm. I've been on that podcast. He does a fantastic job. Go check it out. And React Universe on Air by Callstack. I've also been on there. We did a episode with them, our friends at Callstack, and of course Łukasz being a very good friend, and Jakob and all the others there. So really appreciate all of the media that is put out by our React Native friends. There's also video creators. Theo comes in number one with 35%. And if you watch Theo, or if you kind of keep an eye out on that, you may have seen some Infinite Red commercials, advertisements. We sponsor some of the videos on his channel. So definitely cool to see him still at number one. He gives React Native a lot of love.
In our people section, we have Jamon at number 8 with 6%. That's awesome.
11 people, Jamon.
Yeah, awesome.
How do you feel?
I couldn't even get my whole team to vote for me.
Basically. That's actually hilarious.
Or is that 11 comments?
That's 11 comments. So
no, it's 11 respondents.
That's 11 comments. People answering.
Oh, I see. They had to write it in.
Oh, they had to write it in. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, 11 people.
I appreciate
cared enough
that,
to
folks.
write your name in.
I was, I think, number 4 last year. The thing is, I don't know. I don't tweet as much as I used to, and part of that is because I've started to treat my ADHD, so I don't have the like dopamine seeking behavior. By the way, a little plug here. We did an ADHD episode. I did one. And so go check that out. We'll put it in the show notes. I forget the episode name. One of my favorite episodes. I feel like it was something that I really did from the heart. It was an episode I was very proud of. But yeah, I don't tweet about it as much. I do still. So, definitely follow me if you want. I appreciate the folks that filled out my name there. Number 1, Evan Bacon. Number 2, Mark Wasabi, who I think was number 1 last year. And, it's those two guys. They do so much for the community. I appreciate what they do. Okay, let's jump to the opinions section. And I just want to get like general vibe here. Mazen, I'm going to start with you. When you looked at the opinions, when you looked at like everything across the whole survey, what's your sense for where React Native's at?
Honestly, I think we're moving in the right direction. I think I agree with all of them. I think I haven't seen the last 2 sections here, but I do agree with them that yes, React Native is moving in the right direction. The question about is building React Native apps overly complex right now isn't leaning towards the disagree part. I agree with that. Tools like Expo and, everything that comes with their tool belt is making it so much easier. Is the ecosystem changing too fast? I think this is a hard question to be put in for 2024 when you have the new architecture being added in and stuff like that. So, but it's leaning neutral and more towards strongly disagree. So I think that's perfectly fine. And then, the pain points, I agree with it. We all have these same pain points, unmaintained packages, debugging, keyboard, avoiding stuff, dealing with native code. So, it's all the same sentiments, missing features, better debugging. That's coming in the future. That's been, promised to us by the meta team. So looking at this, I completely agree with it, kind of moving forward.
What about you, Robin?
I feel really, really positively about React Native's maturity with these numbers. And like the thing about the pain points, they're all pain points that indicate that a lot of people are using React Native.
Right.
Like they're feeling the pain points because they're using it. They're not abandoning it because they think it's too complex or they think it's not performant. The companies are adopting it. And so, yeah, of course, there's going to be developers feeling pain about certain things. That's just part of every framework. Yeah, I thought it was interesting how high the agree line is under the React Native ecosystem is changing too fast. I think that about tech in general. Just always.
Yeah.
I'm like, can you guys slow down for a second? I just learned Mavic State Tree. Can I can we not change state management systems again? But overall, really, really positive. I'm happy to work in React Native.
Yeah, and for my opinion, you can actually go to the survey and read it if you want. I will probably tweet it out as well to talk about what I saw. Software Mansion graciously asked me to provide the feedback in this one. And I'm seeing steadily increasing confidence in React Native. 88% felt that they felt that React Native was moving in the right direction. That is a huge deal. Far fewer from last year. It was 44% last year. Now only 22% think that React Native is overly complex. And it's just trending positive across the board. And of course, debugging is now the top pain point spot, which the React Native debugger, React Native DevTools is making its debut. And then, of course, there's, the usual unmaintained packages, keyboard handling, unusable error messages, and dealing with native code. But we did not see upgrades, which was number 4 last year. It's now number 10. So
really great point. Yeah.
Maybe we're starting to solve that. And I think Expo, as well as just the maturity of React Native itself, is helping. And of course, moving to the new architecture, we're going to be seeing that. Of course, hopefully better debugging, all those things, better performance, whatnot, is coming. I think also little things like legend lists. I mean, it's not little, it's kind of a big deal, but legend lists coming in is just going to improve like lists and whatnot. A lot of these pain points we've had over the years are getting addressed. Not everything. I mean, there's still some challenges for sure, but we're getting there. And it makes me feel very positively, which is good because, well, I kind of bet the company on this technology, and I'm hoping that it keeps going for a long time. So I think that's a pretty good place to stop. Thanks to Bartek and Software Mansion for doing the State of React Native survey. You can go to stateofreactnative.com to check it out. And that's it for us. See you all next time.
As always, thanks to our editor, Todd Worth, our assistant editor, Jed Bartosky, our marketing and episode release coordinator, Justin Husky, and our guest coordinator, Mazen Chami. Our producers and hosts are Jamon Holmgren, Robin Hines, and Mazen Chami. Thanks to our sponsor, Infinite Red. Check us out at infinite.red/radio. A special thanks to all of you listening today. Make sure to subscribe to React Native Radio on all the major podcasting platforms.